Disclaimer: the content in this video is mixed with theory and factual information. It is also compiled from many different sources. If you have any input or other information, feel free to comment them down below. Enjoy. In the year of 1987, according to the locals, a phenomenon of something that felt like an earthquake occurred and clouds of dust rose into the sky. Their visibility clouded to almost nothing, and as the dust settled, they witnessed a large dark mass, a red orb, floating amongst the sky, with ash floating around them. Ash that never seemed to stop flowing. This large red orb, which resembles a solar eclipse, created a radius around several areas of this quiet Soviet mining town. This mass, it changed everything for the locals. Their lives became forfeit. Not all through death, however. Some of the residents from Pechorsk cannot stray too far from the radius, according to the trainer when we reach security level 1.
Despite our best efforts, the only ones able to enter the radius, the former inhabitants of Pechorsk, die of organ failure if leaving the 2-kilometer zone around it. The committee needs your help in exploring the phenomenon and finding a cure. The radius is clearly hostile, and only you can shield humanity from its dangers.
The inhabitants cannot leave within a 2-kilometer radius from the anomaly that is the red orb, and only the inhabitants can enter and stay inside the radius. This monstrous anomaly is referred to as the Pechorsk event. Throughout the years up until the year of 2002, the United Nations Pechorsk Special Committee, the UNPSC for short, administers and monitors the zone around the Pechorsk radius. Not a single soul was allowed to enter the radius, and inside the radius, the cursed and lonesome territory is abandoned, left behind to the anomalous creatures of the red orb. And as the years come to pass, the UNPSC continues to speculate what lies inside. Rumors, mysteries, and even legends begin to form and take hold. What rests inside the radius does not exist on our plane of existence. Artifacts, anomalies, and strange entities plague the wasteland that is the radius. Throughout the years, despite the ban of entry, the UNPSC allows their specialists alone to enter and delve deep into the radius. Now, it's speculated that the year is 2014 or at least late 2010s when the player takes place as a 61st explorer. Now, this is only speculation, as I stated, due to some of the weapons the player can have access to. The make and model of a particular weapon was never made until the year of 2014, particularly in this case the DVL-10 Diversant. Now, what's strange to grasp is that the red orb didn't appear overnight, seemingly anyway. Throughout the mining town of Pechorsk, remnants of distant memories, human figures clad in black, as if they were encased in ash, retained some information vital to the lore, and we'll know more when we discuss Permit A route. As for ourselves as Explorer 61, our information on our own character is actually nil. We were simply tasked to carry out the missions given to us by the UNPSC once we enter the radius. Yet, in our upcoming expeditions, they seem to have eyes on our every move, as it feels like they witness every encounter, but especially with a particular special anomaly, an anomaly with a conscience, one that's retained their previous life, and continually suddenly appearing as a clear white figure, white being so few in the game. Our first encounter with this anomaly is in the tutorial zone of the game. But first, what else do we see inside the tutorial zone? We first start off what seems like waking up at a bedside in an apartment home, with ash slowly showering the home. And within this home, some left behind notes write to us with no name. Could this be our thoughts? The first note we see says, "I feel them, I talk to them, but are they people? It looks like, why can't they hear me?" Could this be in reference to the figures clad in ash? We can only speculate. And as we continue to walk through the tutorial area, we notice that everything seems to have aged, deteriorated with rust, cracked wood that failed to be maintained. Then suddenly we notice a white figure in the distance. This female figure seems to speak to us from a distance, yet telepathically. The figure then asks us to touch them, which is a strange request. The figure was unaware if we could hear her. She then proceeds to tell us that she's tried before to contact previous explorers, yet she could not be heard until our encounter.
Oh, you can hear me. I kept trying to speak to others, but they couldn't, and... help me, please.
She then proceeds to ask us for help, and as you proceed through the zone, you begin to notice the other strange phenomena around you. One that really sticks out is large white hands coming from either side after speaking with the girl, as if this anomaly tried to break free and grab hold of the terrain. We then proceed down the tutorial zone, proceeding to learn how to play the game, but more figures of Ash appear before us alongside a note, again with no name. It reads, "I feel that something will happen. My heart is beating though I don't feel it. I'm sure he will come." What is wrong with the inhabitants of Pechorsk? And who is he? Is there an unspoken savior? Are we talking to ourselves, or is there an unspoken god? These are questions for later. And as we delve deeper, we start to see our first few anomalies. However, we'll go over the anomalies later on in the video. Yet further in, we start to notice hand anomalies oozing from the water. Each seem to move and flow with properties of water, but what could these be? That's another mysterious anomaly with hidden information, and they don't appear very often in the game. Going forward, we see the white figure again in the distance, and as we approach her and interact with her, she states this.
We need to make sure you stay that way. This is no place for the living. Go into the fog. See what's out there. Your memories will guide you. Now that we've made this connection, I can find you anywhere.
As we walk into the fog, we start to think of what she means. Why must we stay like this? Is it to stay in touch with her? Will our memories be forfeit? What are we to find in the fog? What are we seeking in our expedition, since the mission to help this figure has started? What kind of connection is made for her to know where we are? But the biggest question here is, how do our memories guide us? Have we been here before? Has the radius taken us before? Have we died from the radius before? Are we in a loop? We'll find out more as we walk further into the radius. After Explorer 61 walks into the radius, we catch a glimpse of what the figure means by our memories guiding us. Is it the translucent figure of our former selves that she could be referring to? This tutorial figure of us? Regardless, we are met with a base on the outskirts south of the radius. Before being allowed to enter, we must get scanned by a sentry turret by raising our hands.
Raise your hands above your head for identification.
Greetings, Explorer. This message is to remind you that you are the UNPSC field officer aiding our research of the Pechorsk radius anomaly. Congratulations on your contract extension. Your security level has been reset to 0 due to long-term absence. Please proceed to your room and continue the missions. We are hoping for complete cooperation.
Is this confirmation that we've been here before? That is the question. In the base lies remnants of an old train depot that seems to be abandoned, and not a single soul lies in this space, yet it's filled with beds, at least around them, and a courtyard. This space is known as Vano in the community. We're unsure if Vano lies inside the radius. As you look into the sky, there's no anomaly, only a haze of distant fog. And as the previous inhabitants and as an explorer, we cannot exceed the radius by 2 kilometers. So we can assume Vano's on the outskirts of the radius, hence the lack of entities, or we are on the inside, but at the very edge. But why are we the sole proprietor? As we are the sole proprietor, there are posters among the walls from the UNPSC giving us valuable information on how to handle the radius and how to maintain everything at home base. Some state to be silent, some show us how to effectively clean our weapons, and more. And in Vano, Explorer 61 is only allowed to accept missions from their room, which needs to be accessed by the watch from our person. Could this be the way the UNPSC is monitoring us? We're not too sure. To acquire gear, we must travel a little deeper inside the train depot of Vano. However, some weaponry is locked to the Explorer. We could perhaps assume the UNPSC withhold their more valuable weapons to the explorers that don't last inside the radius. Yet, to remind you earlier, it's said we've been here before. Our status has been reduced to 0. However, this makes us speculate more, as when an explorer dies within the radius, the mass returns their soul and body back to Vano, leaving behind their gear and a white remnant of their previous life, giving the explorer the perpetual loop of death. Now, it is noted within the Pachorsk anomaly there are tapes lying around, some pertaining to information on anomalies, others being music, and however, 4 tapes are from the UNPSC. I wanted to cover this first, partially due to the contents of the tapes, and here's the first tape, titled The Organization.
Explorers! It has come to the attention of the United Nations Pachorsk Special Committee that many rumors are circulating as to the origins of the UNPSC, as well as the agency's legitimacy and motivations. This memo is intended to clarify the purpose of the UNPSC and put to rest any doubts about the legality of its activities and the good faith in which they are conducted. When the Pachorsk exclusion zone was established, in the aftermath of the asteroid strike known as the event, there was great controversy surrounding the political status of the exclusion zone. The Russian government, which had been first to send in its military and rescue workers, claimed that Pachorsk had become its sole responsibility. Meanwhile, NATO, which had also sent in troops soon after the event, argued for the global significance of the exclusion zone and demanded to oversee security and research activities in the region. A treaty was eventually brokered through the UN, creating the United Nations Pachorsk Special Committee, or UNPSC, to ensure that the security of the Pachorsk exclusion zone would be maintained and research carried out in the spirit of international cooperation. Any claims of exploitation of explorers by the UNPSC are patently false. Those explorers who remember a rich and prosperous world before the event may try to convince you otherwise, but they have not seen the global economic, political, and environmental changes that have occurred. The world outside has become harsher than it once was, both within and outside the radius. Thus, from the very beginning, it has been the UNPSC's mission to maintain justice and peace in and around the Pachorsk exclusion zone. This extends to the UNPSC's contracts with explorers within the zone, whose heroic efforts are invaluable to the research side of the UNPSC's mission. The UNPSC remains, as always, grateful for your excellent work in support of its research.
It goes over the origins and intentions of the UNPSC while also defending its stance in the world. Now let's quickly discuss the contents of this tape. The anomaly originated from an asteroid near Pachorsk. However, the anomaly's activities weren't always the way it is today. Being housed inside Russian borders, Russia took the responsibility and sent their soldiers to research the zone, yet NATO wanted to partake in the anomaly's activities as well, thus creating a treaty, and the UNPSC was born. The research done inside and out of the exclusion zone was to be given to all countries, but the explorers who signed their contracts have no knowledge of the outside world. Yet, from what the UNPSC operator is saying, there were rumors that explorers are being exploited. Was there a betrayal that caused this rumor to occur? Is this a true statement and not just a rumor? Within Vano, there is a poster stating that the UNPSC is exploiting their explorers and degrading the UNPSC. And earlier I told you that the UNPSC operative had given us information during the training after acquiring security level 1. But this next tape adds more information to the exclusion zone.
Explorers, this is a friendly reminder from the UNPSC not to attempt to leave the Pachorsk exclusion zone as demarcated by the electric fence surrounding the site. We deeply regret the necessity of this measure, taken for your own protection, as well as for the protection of anyone attempting to enter the zone. Exposure to radiation and other after effects of the event have made the world outside the exclusion zone toxic for those who were in close proximity to the asteroid strike. Every survivor who left the exclusion zone before the area was cordoned off died within hours, despite the best efforts of the UNPSC's medical specialists. No medications or surgical intervention, not even the creation of controlled environments, succeeded in slowing the deterioration of organ function in those unfortunate survivors of the event. There have been no medical breakthroughs
sense that would suggest that doctors would be able to save a survivor who exited the zone. We hope that our research, with your assistance, will in time permit for such a breakthrough. Meanwhile, the UNPSC is with you in your efforts to maintain whatever norm possible under the circumstances. We are committed to providing you with everything you need for a safe and comfortable existence in return for your continued cooperation.
It advises us to not leave the zone for our own protection. No one can enter the zone either. The anomaly and asteroid strike gave those who were affected a toxic relationship to the outside world. Those who left the zone as the anomaly remained died within hours, even with medical treatment. Nothing could cure the effects of the radius for the former residents of Pechorsk. The research we're collecting is to aid us and other residents to be cured and be rid of the anomaly's effects towards the human body. That is the main purpose of being inside the radius. Now here is another tape titled The Changed. It tells us the beginnings and origins of the zone, a refresher of what happened 5 years prior to the creation of this tape.
Explorers, this year marks the 5th anniversary of the event. The United Nations Pechorsk Special Committee, UNPSC, is aware that periodic memory loss is prevalent among the changed. Thus, we would like to supply you with an overview of the event that created the radius, as well as inform you about the results of your courageous work within the Pechorsk exclusion zone. 5 years ago, in 1987, the diamond mine just outside the town of Pechorsk was struck by an asteroid consisting of highly radioactive material. There was a spike in seismic activity, and all communications with the town ceased. The area around the mine was covered in dense fog, and the entire region around Pechorsk was contaminated by radioactive debris. International rescue efforts were unsuccessful and ended in tragedy, with all rescue workers who entered what would become the Pechorsk exclusion zone dying from radiation exposure. The helicopter sent for a flyover disappeared without a trace. Satellite imagery came back distorted. The area was then cordoned off to prevent further loss of life. It was originally thought that there were no survivors. Eventually, we learned that there were survivors within the exclusion zone, but their biology had been altered, changed in such a manner that they could not survive outside it. Over the past 5 years, one of the UNPSC's primary research objectives has been finding a way to help the changed return to normal life outside the zone. Sadly, we have yet to find a cure. However, with your assistance, we have been able to contribute to advances in other fields. 2 Nobel Prizes have been awarded to physicists whose findings rest largely on the study of artifacts collected from the radius, and your work has resulted in many more achievements across disciplines, especially in the field of communication. Thank you for making these achievements possible. The UNPSC will continue working tirelessly to help you and to ensure that your efforts on behalf of humanity within the exclusion zone are not in vain.
A quick rundown of what we heard. This mining town was for diamonds, yet an asteroid had hit the Pechorsk area and riddled it with radioactivity. The asteroid caused electrical interference with not just communications, but with vehicles and satellite imagery. The asteroid caused the intense fog and contaminated the area with this fog, causing the material within the zone to act strangely. This asteroid caused many rescue times to perish to exposure towards the radiation, thus the quarantine of the zone. It was speculated that there were no survivors, but they recently found out, however, the bodies of the people from Pechorsk could not survive without being near the anomaly, the red orb. And as we stated earlier, the goal is to find a cure. Researchers are using artifacts within the zone to narrow down the possibility of a cure for the residents of the zone. Yet, as of now, there's no cure. So as we go through Vano and accept our first mission, titled The First Expedition, it read, Explorer 61, the UNPSC appreciates your participation in the Free Will Missions program for the residents of the PSC. Your first mission is to retrieve your missing predecessor's wristwatch containing valuable metrics. This task may require using a gun. Now, what is the Free Will Missions program? This is the only mention of this. What metrics are contained within our predecessor's watch? As we walk into the radius, we walk into the first area of the game, Pervame Route. Each area of the radius is surrounded by fog, a thick fog laced with ash. To leave or enter, we have to follow guided posts with rope attached. Now, each area of the game is a circular part of the game. It's safe to say the red orb has separated Pechorsk and left wide diameters of open space that the explorers can walk through without getting lost. If it's intentional, we're unsure. Yet the fog is so thick that if we enter the edge of an unguided area of the fog, we seem to lose ourselves and get transported to another part of the area that we are in. So we can probably connect the dots there. Now when we enter Prevame route, we catch a glimpse of the desolate wonderland that is the Radius. Barren lands, broken buildings, rusted and rundown vehicles, floating debris, and ash, along with the first true glimpse of what the Pachorsk anomaly is. And before walking towards our objective, there's a small nest that we can climb to. There's a special colored box with the symbol for the game. Once we open the box, a recording is left for us. It's for emergencies. It states this.
Attention! This is UNPSC emergency guidance recording L1-61. If you are listening to this, you are most likely suffering from one or more of the following conditions: a sense of displacement, disorientation, memory loss, ataxia, and visual auditory hallucinations. Please remain calm. You are experiencing the adverse effects of prolonged exposure to the Pachorsk radius. This recording was placed here by the UNPSC to guide affected personnel to safety. Inside this emergency cache, you will find a basic survival kit that will get you to the nearest research outpost. Enter the fog to find it.
Then it proceeds to tell us that the cache is there to help us so we can find the research outpost, which is Vano. This confirms a lot of things for us. We have been here before, along with other side effects. Are the voices from the humanoid ash figures these auditory hallucinations? What's referred to as a visual hallucination? The anomalies? The ash? Or is it the white figure? Or all of it? And as we walk towards our mission objective, we see another ash figure. If the player breaks the ash figure, memory begins to play. This is quite frequent in the game. And as I stated previously, the radius doesn't appear overnight, at least seemingly. This memory gives us a potential glimpse of the upbringing of the anomaly side effect, the tide. We'll talk more about the tide here shortly.
What's this unreal hum again? Just got the new coil installed, should work all right. Gotta lock the thing up before some sneaky bastard breaks in and steals it again. Where did the key go?
After listening to the memory, it's not a simple misplacement of the key. The man questioned himself as if he knew the key was there before, and this hum he speaks of is from what he's working on, apparently. But did a growing anomaly from the asteroid cause this coil to malfunction? Did the tide transport his key? The anomaly is connected to malfunctions in terms of electronics and possibly the tide transporting the key. And as we walk towards the blog post, we enter inside the concrete building to search for our predecessor's watch. And when we find it and pick it up and place it into our pack, the white figure again appears at the doorway of the building. Once we break her porcelain state, she begs for our help again, claiming that the statue figure we broke was not actually her. She claims she's trapped in a dark place, a place where she cannot move. She wants to be set free. Finally tells us her name.
I'm so sick of this place, whatever it is. My name's Katya, by the way.
Katya.
I'm so
She expresses her genuine gratitude for finding us and that she's glad to not be alone any longer. Katya still remains a mystery, yet as a UNPSC operative, it's imperative that we help her and discover why she can speak with us, engage with us, and guide us. And as we proceed through the game, we will learn more about Katya and her previous life. However, it's safe to assume that her intent is genuine. Or is it? Now there is another instance of Katya outside of the blog post. She floats behind some sandbags. She gives us this information.
The block post was part of the Soviet Army's attempt to take control of the situation in the first days following the event. But the boys who manned it? There was no way they could have done anything or helped anyone in the city. They all got so sick. And they were confused, disoriented. They had been preparing for war, even nuclear war. But they couldn't have expected something like this, whatever it was. Whatever it is. Maybe it's just the Earth, tired of us.
The Soviet battalion stayed in this blog post not so long after the anomaly formed, and these soldiers prepared themselves for the worst, but only to be met with the radius side effects. More victims, and more mimics to roam the radius. Now, after the first expedition, we can choose between these two options: explore some more of the Privame or go back to Vano, although it is suggested to head back so the explorer can get more training and acquire new gear. And when entering Vano, suddenly a lore letter appears in our pack, and it reads, "The light keeps going out all day. There was no outage at the power station. Someone broke inside and destroyed the hardware. They didn't touch the locks though, which is kind of weird. And they stole this coil, was it? Mom's being grumpy because her department at the factory stalled. Okay, need to get a candle now. A Daughter of the Snows is a page turner." This gives us more information on the ash figure's words. Could it be related, or is the specific coil something else? Either way, the Pachorsk anomaly had collected energy over time before it manifested as specific traits like the tide. This is theory, though, but the electronics at the power station continually went out, so we can assume that it is an accumulated anomaly. And as we walk back into the radius to start to explore Privame route further, and possibly with our second top priority mission, we start to see and encounter several anomalies that reside in the radius, a few being familiar from the tutorial zone, specifically the black grass, distortion, and fragments. We'll go over the various anomalies that you interact with inside of Privame route's radius first before speaking about the others that are closer to the Pachorsk anomaly. I do want to give props to a small savior in our mission to help Katya and the aid for the research for the UNPSC, a predecessor and his logs that were scattered about the radius due to the tide. Explorer 12. This explorer had logged every anomaly they possibly could, giving us guides and information to counter the anomalies. Most of the information I will give you will be from Explorer 12's logs, just paraphrased. First, we'll talk about the more stationary anomalies, starting with the distortion anomaly. These anomalies float in the air and in a mirage-like spatial distortion with sharp square faces, and the longer you stay in these, the more your body is shifted and broken on a molecular level and falls apart. The reflector anomaly is a pulsating yet transparent sphere. It is a particularly dangerous anomaly. It repels any object in its diameter with high speeds and high temperatures to several hundred degrees. The shock anomaly is an invisible anomaly until it's triggered. The best way to know of its presence is listening to the loud crackling electrical noises. It is one of the most dangerous stationary anomalies. When the anomaly is triggered, a massive charge of electricity is hurled to the closest object or human. The black grass anomaly stays inside the dark, whether they encroach from the walls, ceiling, or floors. It retracts when light is shown on the anomaly. Despite being sensitive to the light, it causes immediate damage when being touched. Lastly, the anomalies that target the explorers. Better to just call them entities. First is the spawn, which is also referred to as spiders in some cases. These are fast-moving anomalies that crawl around the floors with 12 tentacles coming from this small mass. These small clusters buzz around as they crawl among the radius, and these little creatures like to spring into the air and lunge at their prey. Now, fragments are humanoid yet have the texture of wool and rubber. Fragments have two variants, a dark and translucent version, and the translucent fragments are more commonly known as phantoms. These entities can spot and explore from afar and can notify the surrounding enemies of the explorer's location. The darker fragments are the most common entity in the radius, but what's strange about these darker fragments is when you destroy the body of the fragment, a core is revealed. If the core is not destroyed by the fragment, they can reform and come back to life. Now, this core resembles the Pachorsk anomaly, and could each entity be attempting to accumulate the power to get that prowess similar to that of the parent? Sorry for the jumble of words, but it's a good theory, I think. Imagining a world filled with these giant red orbs is actually quite terrifying, and we can theorize that later in a video if it's requested, but back to the remaining entities that you are prone to encounter. Mimics. They are one of the most horrifying and unsettling creatures, a silhouette of a replicated figure of the past. Even equipping firearms, they are composed of pure black material and have always shot at explorers. And these entities are able to speak in distorted voices of various genders and ages. Mimics have three variations of themselves. They are policemen, which is the most common, commando soldiers, and snipers. Each mimic varies in weaponry as well. They are some of the most unpredictable anomalies within the radius. Lastly, the rift anomaly. The rifts are a cluster and deformed amalgamation of entities. If the rift hums and if left alone, they can create entities around their origin. It's as if they detach a piece of their being to create enemies to defeat any foe around. It's advised to destroy these anomalies as fast as possible, yet slay your foes in silence before they find you in the dark. There are more anomalies to cover, yet we'll mention them at the respective time frame you encounter them. The next mission is an odd one to uphold for the UNPSC because there's no real correlation. Well, we can only assume the UNPSC somehow is able to witness or at least hear our encounter with Katya, somehow, hence the electrical interference. And as the Petrovsk anomaly dries out the energy in the zones, potentially causing interference from the outside world. The mission is to find and deliver film for a camera, film that contains important scientific photos. This is a very particular mission. Maybe the predecessor's wristband provided information regarding Katya's existence and hobbies. This theory derives from the notes around the motor depot. A note reads this: "Can you please help me get a gift for Katya? A film or something. The kid is crazy about photography. Thank you." And ash-clad figures states this.
Where's the film was here just now. Need to develop it while the back room is free. Oh, God, you will hate me if I don't bring it back.
Did Katya somehow find evidence of what the Petrovsk anomaly was, or how to destroy it? Maybe the tide just magically transported this item away. Regardless, the film had moved and was lost to the radius. Until we recover the film. With the photo retained, we are forbidden to know. There is no source anywhere regarding these photos. We just have to continue conducting our research for the NPSC. While at the motor depot, before departing back to Vano, we find Katya's white figure again. She starts to give us a little story, saying this.
My father was a truck driver. He'd be away for long periods of time on inner city routes. I wish he'd been away when the event happened. But it was right around his birthday. We still had unfinished cake in the fridge. Napoleon, his favorite. He taught me to drive when I was very young. We had a lot of fun. My father was the silent type and didn't spend much time with us girls, but driving was something he could share with me. Though we didn't know when or how I'd get a car of my own. I was really looking forward to that day. The freedom. And what do I have to look forward to now? You might be my only hope. No pressure.
It's at this time where we should theoretically sympathize with her and have the need to help her. Luckily, our missions continually decide to walk the same path as Katya. It is then time to acquire our next mission from the UNPSC. But another note appears in our pact when we walk back into Vano. It reads, "Is someone trying to mess things up? Because we can't all be losing our mind. Lena's cat's missing, Sveta can't find her glasses, everyone I knew lost something today. My precious Kodak roll that Uncle Dima got me from Japan is gone too. Dad put it on his desk at the depot office and never saw it again. All the family photos I took are gone now." We can only assume these notes are connected to Katya, along with the Petrovsk anomaly's foundation. More things are disappearing and gone missing, whether it's from the delirium or the anomaly's side effect, we don't know. And back in Vano, after turning in the film, we can then acquire the next mission. The description from the UNPSC reads this. "Explorer, there was an attempt of data breach caused by one of your predecessors. We entrust you with recovering the files left behind in Bolotki village by a fugitive explorer number 58. This spot is heavily guarded, so get prepared." Unfortunately, we do not have any information on our predecessors, only a select few that decided to document their information and aid the research for the UNPSC. But what made Explorer 58 a fugitive? Did they succumb to the radius? Did it plague them due to the side effects of the radius? Regardless, the next key information is that the mission is in a new territory, Bolotki village. According to our map, there are two paths through the fog to enter Bolotki's radius. However, they're not far apart from each other when you enter the new radius. Bolotki village's main difference is not just the size of the radius from Pervime, but the swamp that encapsulates the zone along with the village and construction zone. The other points of interest are a floating helicopter, which is more than likely tied to the previous discussion of the MPSC tapes, stating a helicopter vanished. Other interests are the outpost and a red lake with a peculiar set of hand anomalies, an anomaly similar to what we saw in the tutorial zone. And as we explore Bolotki and walk towards the village for the mission, fixing a leak, we scavenge the area and destroy the anomalies, some being more lethal mimics, and Katya is in front of our eyes once again. When we break her figure, she starts to reminisce about the past, speaking of an old lady. Naturally, if we're caring, we'd want to help Katya more to acquire her life back. What's odd is that we hear birds chirping in the background as she conversates with us. Is this just a memory of her past, yet she's conversing with us?
Old people without family to take care of them used to live in this village. I knew one of them, a woman. One of my kindergarten teachers. She retired and moved out of the city just a couple years before I finished school. She could have retired earlier, but she loved working with children. So she kept working till she couldn't be on her feet so many hours of the day. I don't think she had children of her own. I used to visit her at the kindergarten and later out here. She was hunched over and wrinkled, but as commanding as ever. I wonder what happened to her. She died, of course, but how? What were her final thoughts? I hope she was at peace. No one deserved it more.
Afterwards, inside the houses she faced, we find the documents lying on the bed, the mission objective. And before heading back, there's a particular figure that interests me that there are no records of. It's not the only item in the game like this, however. Katya isn't the only solid white figure in the radius, or us when we perish. There is what seems like a white remnant of a teddy bear at the village. Does this correlate to Katya's existence? Is this her teddy bear? It's a strange and unique item that there is no information on anywhere, but we can assume these white-clad figures are connected somehow. Taking a look at our debrief, the UNPSC advises us to find a shortcut in the village guarded by a new enemy referred to as a Seeker. And surrounding the Seeker is another stationary anomaly that's spread about Bolotki, named webs. Webs are long and dark strands that reside normally in forest, yet have been known to attach to other surfaces. They make no sound and are easy to miss. Do not take the webs lightly, as a single touch can send you back to Wano through death. When touched, they will hiss as they drain the life from whatever it touches with burning pain, and even if the subject backs away from these anomalies, that sensation will not subside for a long while. These are extremely hard to see when traversing in low light times of day or even buildings. And as for the Seeker, it's another terrifying humanoid anomaly. They slouch like zombies, yet have the speed of the average athlete. They chase down their prey with persistence and will attack at a small distance away from their foes. They attack using the material at and around their heads, firing hot beams towards the explorer, stabbing them using a strange vector. What makes them terrifying is their silence, which allows them to ambush any capable enemy and strike them down swiftly. What's strange about some of these anomalies, their humanoid figures aren't whole. They violently shake and look like static. It's quite the interesting design. Anyway, back to the topic. After heading back into Wano, we are given to the next advancement in Security Level 2, which allows the explorer to acquire a larger variety of weapons, whether it's a new pistol, submachine guns, or their first rifle, an SKS. This also includes weapon modifications for pistols and other utilities and equipment, the gas mask being the most important for the next mission, Flash in the Dark. The debrief for the next top priority mission states this: your loyalty will be taken into consideration in Explorer 61. Your map has been marked with the coordinates of an exotic emission. The presumable source is an uncategorized artifact. Deliver it to the facility. Along with the gas mask, the explorer must bring the AD-15 detector, a device for acquiring artifacts. The mission is to acquire an unknown artifact for research. The site is surrounded by a haze anomaly. The haze anomaly is a floating cloud of gas that never spreads. It follows specific patterns with these conditions. It emanates effects similar to mustard gas. A gas mask is always advised. Unfortunately, we are given no information on the artifact that we are tasked with. However, during the expedition, most would explore the radius longer as the mission can be completed quite quickly, thus leading us to the construction site, where there's plenty of anomalies and Katya can once again speak to us. Once we clear out the construction site, she speaks to us more of her past and then us, giving us a sense of dread yet hope to find our true name, our standing in the world, since the anomaly had taken it all from us.
Beautiful, isn't it? At least it used to be. You can see everything from up here. Not that I ever thought of it myself, but I imagined what it would be like. The vertigo, the awe. There were some boys I knew who claimed to have made the climb. I almost believed them, but they kept arguing about particulars. How far out they could see and what. Now there's nothing to see. Were you from around here? Was Pachorsk your home like it was mine? Or did you come here later? For work? For love? Maybe you only planned on being here for a year or two and then going home, wherever home was for you. Or maybe you planned to emigrate? Leave the country and never return? I knew people like that too. Oh, I'm sorry. It's cruel of me to ask all these questions when you don't even know your name. No matter. We'll think of a name for you. Maybe Dima or Maxim? Find me and we'll figure it out together.
When coming home to Vano, another note is left in our pack. It reads, "Things keep getting stranger. A neighbor told me about some toxic fog at the swamp. He noticed a weird glow in the abandoned building and wanted to check it out, but ran into an armed man inside. Then everything got covered in this thick green smoke. He started choking and fled. He keeps telling this to people over and over, but sounds too crazy. This tells us the haze anomaly wasn't an instantaneous existence either. And it also sounds like the government knew that it existed, but who knows?" Now, Into the Radius is a VR experience that is filled with mystery. The sheer atmosphere of the Radius is a tough one to behold, and the lore is for us, the players, to put together. It is very, very convoluted, and I wanted to put this together. This is part 1 of 2. Oh, maybe 3, who knows. I hope you enjoyed ASMR Soul today and the topic of the lore that is the Radius. Any irrelevant and speculated irrelevant information towards the Radius can be made into another video if you want it. So if you like this, make sure to tell me in the comment section, as well as leaving any input, any theories, etc. on the lore of the game. This series will bring about a lot of questions that may or may not be answered. This is all findings and recordings from within the game's written and said lore. No other information has been given to us yet. A lore update might be present in the future, hence the hint for the update 2.27, I believe, for the game. So I'm quite excited to see what they do if they add a bunch of stuff for the lore. If you want to discuss this even further, I'm usually live on Tuesdays and Fridays, but my schedule pretty much is flexible. So pop into chat, let's talk about it anytime. I'm always down to talk about Into the Radius and lore. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think, and we will continue this in part 2. Let's discuss in the comments.